I came to surprise my daughter on her third week at her husband's family firm. I expected to find her in a meeting room, presenting numbers, proving what she was made of. Instead, I found her on her knees in the corridor outside the managing partner's office, scrubbing a coffee stain off the carpet, while two men in suits stepped around her without a word. Then her mother-in-law appeared in the doorway, looked down at her, and said to the men beside her, "Cleaning up messes is about the only thing she's qualified to do." My daughter looked up. Our eyes met, and I watched something inside her go very quiet. I said nothing. I walked back to the lift, pressed the button, and made a call. 12 days later, the woman who said those words was the one on her knees, begging a boardroom to believe her. Welcome to American Home Voices. Before we go any further, tell me in the comments where you're watching from and how old you are right now. I'm genuinely curious who's walking through this story with me. And when you finish, rate it from 1 to 10. Your support means more than you know. Please understand this story contains some fictionalized elements added for narrative and learning purposes. Any resemblance to actual names or settings is purely coincidental. But the message I'm sharing is meant to matter. The morning started the way most of my mornings do now. 5:30. Already awake, lying in the dark, listening to the magpies start up outside. 41 years working construction in Newcastle taught my body to rise before the sun whether I wanted to or not. Margaret, my wife, used to say I'd be the only man at his own funeral who woke up early. She passed 8 years ago. Breast cancer. 14 months from diagnosis to the end. I still reach for her side of the bed sometimes without thinking. I got up, put the kettle on, and stood at the kitchen window watching the light come up over the back fence. The garden was Margaret's project, really. I just maintained it after she was gone. Kept the roses going because she loved them and because it gave me something to do with my hands. My daughter Elise was the reason I was up and restless that particular Tuesday. Not because anything had happened yet. Just that feeling. The one that comes when you've built things for 40 years and your gut tells you a foundation isn't right before you can see the crack. Elise had married Patrick Drummond 2 years earlier. Good-looking bloke, well-spoken. Came from money the way some people come from a place it was simply where he was from. Unremarkable to him. Defining to everyone else. His family owned Drummond Strachan Partners, one of the older commercial property firms on the New South Wales Central Coast. Patrick had offered Elise a position 3 months after the wedding. Operations manager. Real role, real salary, real future. I'd been cautious. Not because I didn't want good things for my daughter. I wanted everything for her. Bachelor of Business from Newcastle. Top of her cohort. 5 years working her way up at a logistics company before Patrick came along. She'd earned her credentials the hard way, the way people do when nobody hands them anything. But working for your husband's family is a different thing to working for a company. I'd seen it before, on job sites. The boss's son-in-law always had to work twice as hard just to be seen as half as capable. I'd said as much to Elise the Sunday before she started. She'd smiled at me from across the kitchen table, the same smile her mother used to give me when she thought I was worrying about nothing. "Dad, Patricia has been nothing but welcoming. Patrick says she's excited to have me on the team." Patricia Drummond, Patrick's mother, 64 years old, widowed 6 years, and now sole managing partner of the firm her late husband had founded. By all appearances, polished and gracious. The kind of woman who sends handwritten notes and remembers birthdays and makes you feel, at first, like you are exactly where you're meant to be. I'd met her 4 times. At each meeting, I'd come away with the same feeling I got from certain project managers over the years. The ones who smiled at you while they were already deciding how to use you. I couldn't prove it. It was just a feeling, and I'd learned to trust my feelings. The first 2 weeks, Elise had sounded fine on the phone, busy, settling in, learning the systems. Then, On the Monday of her third week, something shifted in her voice. She said everything was fine, but she said it quickly. The way you do when you've been practicing saying it. That's what had me up at 5:30. By 9 that morning, I'd driven down to Gosford where the Drummond-Strachan offices were. I told myself I'd just drop in, maybe take her to lunch, just check in, just quiet the feeling. I parked on the street and walked to the building. A clean mid-rise with the firm's name etched in the glass above the entrance. The receptionist, a young bloke named Tom, recognized me from the Christmas function. He smiled and waved me through. I took the lift to the third floor. I heard Patricia's voice before I rounded the corner. That particular tone, smooth and carrying, the kind of voice trained to project authority without appearing to try. Then, I saw Elise. She was on the floor in the corridor, on her hands and knees, working at a stain on the carpet with a cloth and a small spray bottle. She was in her good work clothes. Her hair was pulled back. Her face was down. Patricia stood in the open doorway of her corner office, with two men I didn't recognize. Both of them in suits. Both of them watching. "Don't mind her," Patricia said pleasantly, as though pointing out a piece of furniture. "Cleaning up messes is about the only thing she's qualified to do." The men exchanged a glance. One of them made a sound that wasn't quite a laugh. Elise looked up at that moment and saw me standing at the end of the corridor. Her face did something complicated. The shame came first. Then something worse than shame, the silent plea I recognized because I'd seen it once before, on the face of a young bloke on a job site 20 years ago, who'd been humiliated by a foreman in front of the crew. The look that says, "Please, don't make this worse. Please, just go." I looked at Patricia. She'd noticed me now. She raised her eyebrows with an expression of mild, practiced surprise. "Mr. Callahan, we weren't expecting you." "Clearly," I said. My voice came out level. I was in the area. "Elise is in the middle of something," Patricia said. The smile didn't waver. I can see that. I held her gaze for a moment. Then I looked at my daughter. "I'll call you tonight, love." Elise nodded. She couldn't speak. I walked back to the lift, pressed the button, stood there while the numbers counted down, and everything I wanted to do with my hands stayed exactly where it was. When the doors opened, I stepped in, turned around, and saw Patricia already turned back to her meeting as though I'd never been there. I drove to the waterfront and sat in my car for 40 minutes. Then I called Raymond Kowalski. Raymond was 61 years old, semi-retired, and the sharpest commercial investigator I'd ever encountered. I'd met him 15 years earlier when a project partner of mine had suspected fraud on a development deal. Raymond had found the evidence in 11 days that the lawyers had missed in 11 months. We'd stayed in contact. He owed me nothing and I owed him nothing, which meant when either of us called, the other knew it was serious. "Ray," I said, when he picked up, "I need you to look at a firm called Drummond-Strachan Partners on the Central Coast. Everything you can find." He didn't ask why. He said, "Give me 48 hours. He called back in 36. We met at a cafe in Wyong the following Thursday morning. Raymond looked the same as he always did, unhurried, slightly rumpled, with the kind of eyes that had cataloged too many lies to be surprised by new ones. He had a folder with him, and he opened it the way a doctor opens a chart when he already knows the diagnosis. "Patricia Drummond has a problem," he said. I wrapped my hands around my coffee. "How bad?" $11.3 million bad. I set the cup down. "The firm's been bleeding since her husband died," Raymond continued. 3 major developments, either stalled or written off in the past 4 years. She's been managing the perception of stability while quietly cannibalizing the client retainer accounts to cover operational costs. 2 of the firm's senior partners, Gareth Strachan's son and a woman named Diane Okafor, They've been pushing for an independent audit for 18 months. Patricia's been blocking it. How long before it collapses? 60 to 90 days before the banks start asking questions she can't answer. When that happens, the firm goes into administration. 47 staff members. Gone. I stared at the folder. Red figures everywhere. There's more, Raymond said. He slid a second set of documents across. Elise was hired for a reason, not for her skills, though she has them. Patricia needed someone on the inside who could be blamed if things went wrong. Someone without the firm's name. Someone expendable. My jaw tightened. She's been systematically excluding Elise from client meetings, reassigning her responsibilities to junior staff without explanation, and documenting every small error while ignoring the same errors from her own people. She's building a paper trail. Raymond paused. If this goes badly, Elise takes the fall. I sat back. What's the firm worth? I asked. Raymond tapped the page. Distressed assets, client book, goodwill, maybe 3.5 to 4 million if you moved quickly. But to stabilize it, cover the shortfall, and retain enough of the staff to keep the client relationships intact, you'd need approximately 8.5 million. That buys you controlling interest and buys you time to restructure. 8.5 million. I did the arithmetic in my head. The way you do. When the numbers are yours and you've watched them accumulate over decades. My property portfolio. 4 houses I'd bought carefully over 30 years. 3 of them fully tenanted. 1 in Maitland I'd renovated myself the year after Margaret died, because I needed something to do with the grief. My superannuation. My share portfolio. Modest but consistent. Built on the habit of investing $200 a fortnight since 1989, regardless of what the market was doing. The equity on my own home, it was all there. Just barely. Raymond, I said. Don't. He looked at me. Don't what? Whatever you're about to say. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, that's 40 years, Frank. I know what it is. You'd be starting over at 63. I took out my phone. Found a photo I'd taken at Elise's graduation. Her in the gown, holding the certificate, laughing at something off camera with her whole face, the way her mother used to laugh. I turned the screen toward Raymond. How much is her future worth? I asked quietly. Raymond looked at the photo. Then he put both hands on the table and rubbed his face. Everything you've got, apparently. Then let's get to work. That afternoon, I sat at my kitchen table and wrote 3 names on a notepad. Sandra Briggs, my real estate agent for 22 years. She'd found the buyers for 2 of my properties when the market was soft, and everyone else said wait. I called her and told her to sell all 4. She was quiet for a moment, then asked how fast. I told her as fast as she could. She didn't ask why. Colin Webb at my brokerage. I told him to liquidate the entire portfolio. He cleared his throat and asked if I was certain. I told him I was. He said he'd have it done by end of week. And Judith Park, my super fund manager. That call was the hardest. Judith had helped me set up the fund when I was 31 and had checked in every year since with the kind of steady, no-nonsense care that made you feel your future was in good hands. She asked if everything was all right. I told her it was a family matter. She processed the withdrawal without further question. That night, Elise called. Her voice had the same quality it had carried all week, carefully composed, like someone holding a structure together with both hands. Just ringing to say sorry about today, Dad. That was awkward. I don't know why, Patricia. You don't need to apologize for anything, I said. She's under a lot of pressure with the quarterly review coming up. I think she just... Elise. I kept my voice gentle. How are you really? Silence. Then, very quietly, I don't know how much longer I can do this. I know. I have the qualifications. I have the experience. I come in early. I stay late. I've reread every file in that operations folder twice, and every single day she finds a way to. She stopped, to make you feel like none of it counts. Yeah. Her voice was small. Every part of me wanted to tell her what I was doing. To say, hold on, I've seen the numbers. I know what she's building. You won't be there much longer. But I couldn't. If Elise said anything to Patrick, if Patrick mentioned it to his mother with even a change in tone, the whole thing collapsed. Just a little longer, I said. Can you do that for me? She exhaled. Okay. Yes. Okay. I love you, Elise. Love you too, Dad. After she hung up, I sat in the dark of the kitchen with my hands flat on the table. The same table where Elise had done her homework through high school. Where she'd cried the night she got her first serious rejection letter from a firm she wanted. Where Margaret and I had told her, the two of us together, that her mother was sick. I looked at Margaret's photo on the shelf. I promised you, I said to the empty room. I promised I'd take care of her. The clock ticked. The house said nothing back. By Saturday, the first property sale had settled. By Monday, the share portfolio was liquid. By Tuesday, the superannuation withdrawal had cleared. Raymond had used the time to set up a proper corporate structure through a firm in Sydney he trusted. The vehicle was called Coastal Bridge Capital. Clean registration. No public-facing connection to my name. 3 people would act as the public representatives. Noel Abernethy, a semi-retired commercial lawyer from the Hunter Valley, who had once worked with Margaret's family and had stayed a friend. Louise Tan, a financial consultant I'd met through a regional business forum 5 years ago and helped navigate a difficult audit. And Douglas Firth, former CFO of a mid-sized logistics group. A man Raymond had vouched for in terms I trusted. None of them would be lying. Coastal Bridge Capital was real. The money was real. I simply wouldn't be visible. On Wednesday of the second week, Raymond called at 7 a.m. We have a problem, he said. Can you come to me? He was at his home office in Terrigal. When I arrived, he had his laptop open and a look I hadn't seen on him before. Not worried exactly, but careful. The way a man looks when he's handling something that could go either way. I've been tracking Patricia's movements since we spoke, he said. Yesterday afternoon, she met with someone at a hotel in Arena. I had someone watching. The man she met with is a financial advisor named Peter Satchel. He's legitimate on paper, but he has a history of, let's say, creative solutions for clients in difficulty. What kind of solutions? In 2019, he helped a client restructure debt in a way that involved providing certain investigators with misleading information. One of those investigators ended up having a complaint lodged against him. The complaint was eventually dismissed, but it cost him 4 months. I understood what Raymond was telling me. You think she knows someone's looking at the firm. I think she's being careful. Whether she knows specifically about us, I can't say. But she's not sitting still. He turned the laptop toward me. Satchel has connections to a solicitor who does this kind of work. Injunctions, temporary restraining orders on commercial transactions. If she gets wind of an acquisition bid before we're ready to move, she could tie everything up in court for months. I looked at the screen, thought about the 60 to 90-day window. How much time do we have? I'd want to move by end of next week. The board meeting for the quarterly review is scheduled for the Friday after. That's our window. The independent directors, Gareth Strachan's son James and Diane Okafor, they will be there. If we present the offer with the supporting documentation at that meeting, Patricia can't block it without triggering exactly the audit she's been avoiding. Can Noel, Louise, and Douglas be ready? They're ready now. Raymond paused. There's one more thing. Elise. I looked at him. Patricia has escalated. Raymond pulled up an email chain he'd obtained through channels I chose not to examine too closely. 3 days ago, Patricia sent a message to James Strachan with a summary of what she described as Elise's performance concerns. The language was careful and professional, but it was the beginning of a formal paper trail. My chest tightened. "She's moving faster than I expected," Raymond said. "Which means we have to as well." That night Elise called again. She sounded different this time. Not quiet. Something harder. A core of anger she was trying to keep managed. Patrick's mother asked me today, in front of 3 clients, whether I'd had any formal training in commercial property, or whether I'd just assumed the role would come naturally because I married into the family. I closed my eyes. The clients laughed. "Dad." They thought she was joking. And I just sat there and smiled. "Because what else do you do?" She stopped. I felt like I wasn't real, like I'd been made into a prop in someone else's story. "You are not a prop," I said. "You are the most capable person in that room, and she knows it. That's precisely why she's doing this." Elise was quiet. Then, Do you know something?" I hesitated 1 beat too long. "Dad, trust me," I said. "Can you just trust me for a few more days?" Another silence. "What are you doing?" "Something I should have started sooner." "Just hold on, love. Please," she breathed. "Okay." On Thursday morning, a fortnight after I'd found my daughter on the floor of that corridor, I was sitting in Noel Abernethy's car outside the Drummond Strachan building at 8:45 in the morning. Noel, Louise and Douglas were inside. Raymond was parked 50 meters down the street. I was watching the entrance. The board meeting was at 9. Raymond had submitted the acquisition offer through proper channels the previous afternoon. The offer was clean and detailed. $8.5 million for 63% of Drummond Strachan Partners, conditional on full financial disclosure, and Patricia stepping down from the managing partner role within 30 days. The board had 5 members. Patricia, James Strachan, Diane Okafor, 2 outside directors named Howard Beale and Carol Whitfield, who had been growing increasingly uneasy, Raymond told me, with the state of the firm's accounts. By 9:15, my phone buzzed. "Raymond, they're all in. Patricia looks like she's been told the building is on fire." By 9:40, Noel messaged me a single word. "In." I got out of the car. When I walked into the boardroom, Patricia's composure lasted about 4 seconds. Then it cracked at the edges in a way I suspected very few people had ever seen. "What is he doing here?" she said. Her voice was still controlled, but the temperature had changed. Noel spoke before anyone else could. "Mr. Callahan is a principal of Coastal Bridge Capital and has been authorized to address the board directly. This is a closed board meeting." Patricia looked at James Strachan. "James, this is highly irregular." James Strachan was 41 years old, built like someone who'd played rugby until his late 30s, and then slowly made peace with sitting at tables. He had his father's eyes, direct and unhurried, and he had not looked away from Patricia since I walked in. "The offer is legitimate," he said. "We're obligated to hear it." I sat down. Louise and Douglas settled in beside me. Noel opened the folder. "Coastal Bridge Capital is offering $8.5 million for 63% of Drummond Strachan Partners," Noel said. "The offer includes full assumption of the firm's current debt obligations, a 12-month operational restructure plan, and retention of all 47 current staff members." Diane Okafor was reading the documents in front of her. She was 53, a former commercial banker, and she had the particular stillness of someone who had learned to sit with difficult information without showing her reaction. She turned to page 4. She kept reading. Patricia leaned forward. "This offer is predicated on a false picture of the firm's finances. We are not in the position these documents suggest. The quarterly figures, as reported." Diane said, without looking up. Or the quarterly figures as they actually stand. Silence. Howard Beale, the older of the two outside directors, had pushed his copy of the financial summary toward Carol Whitfield. She was reading it with her glasses on, and her hand very still on the table. "Patricia," Howard said quietly. "The retainer account discrepancies on page 7. Can you explain those? Those are a matter of timing. Cash flow management. They've been occurring for 16 months, Diane said. I would like to propose, I said, keeping my voice level, that the board consider what happens to 47 employees and their families if this firm enters administration in the next 60 days. And I'd like to propose that this offer represents the only viable path to preventing that." Patricia turned to me. The grace was gone now. What was underneath it was not rage exactly. It was the cold, calculating look of someone recalculating their options in real time. "You have no standing here," she said. "You are the father of an employee. You have no commercial." "I have $8.5 million, I said. "And I have every financial record this firm has produced in the last 4 years. Would you like me to go through them, page by page?" Carol Whitfield looked up from her documents. "I've seen enough," she said. "I move that we proceed to a formal vote on the Coastal Bridge offer." "Seconded," said James Strachan. Patricia looked at Patrick, who was seated against the wall as an observer, not a board member. He had not spoken since I entered the room. He was looking at the table. The vote was 4-1. When it was done, when Gerald Chambers, that is, when James Strachan read out the result, Patricia stood up slowly. "You have no idea what you've walked into," she said. "I think I have a fair idea," I said. "I've been in this business a long time." She left without another word. In the corridor outside, I found Elise. Raymond had called her an hour earlier and told her to come to the office without explaining why. She was standing near the lift, looking confused and slightly frightened. When she saw me, her face went through everything at once. "Dad, what are you doing here? What's happening? Come here, love." I put my arm around her and walked her to a quiet corner near the window that looked out over the car park and the flat gray winter water beyond it. "I'm going to need a few minutes to explain this properly," I said. "But the short version is that you are not going back to work for Patricia Drummond. The firm has new management. And if you want to, you have a real job here. A genuine one. With people around you who know exactly what you're worth." She stared at me. "Dad, how did you—" She looked at my face. "What did you do?" "Something that needed doing." "How much?" She knew me well enough to ask the right question. I told her. The color left her face. "Dad, that's everything. That's your retirement. That's my investment in something I believe in," I said. "That's my investment in you." She put her hand over her mouth. When she lowered it, her eyes were wet. "You can't do that for me. Already done." I squeezed her shoulder. "Your mother would have sold the house without a second thought." Elise laughed, a broken sound, and then she was crying properly. I stood there with my arm around her, the way I had when she was 9 years old and her cat died, and I hadn't known what to say then either. Sometimes you just have to be present. Sometimes that is the whole thing. 6 months passed. I am sitting at my kitchen table now on a Sunday morning in the particular kind of light that only comes in June in this part of the world, pale and clean and very still. The coffee is on. The magpies are up. The roses along the back fence are just starting to push through again, later in the season than Margaret would have liked. Elise comes for breakfast most Sundays now. She arrives at 8, brings sourdough from the bakery in Adamstown, and we sit at this table for 2 hours talking about nothing and everything. She runs operations at what is now called Coastal Bridge Strachan, a name we chose because it honored the people who'd built the firm while making clear that something had changed. The 47 staff members are still employed. 3 of them received promotions in the restructure. A woman named Beverly Cook, who had been quietly doing the work of 2 people for 4 years while receiving the title of 1, is now the deputy operations manager. She'd sent me a card in the first month that I keep in the kitchen drawer. Patricia Drummond had fought the acquisition through her solicitors for 3 weeks before the debt position made further resistance impossible. She resigned from the firm, and the formal financial audit that followed revealed the full picture. 2 of her actions are now the subject of regulatory complaints lodged by Diane Okafor. I don't know where that ends. The law moves at its own pace, and I have learned not to need the outcome in order to feel settled about the decision. Patrick and Elise are in a difficult place. He hadn't known the extent of what his mother was doing. I believe that. But he had looked at the table during the vote. And there are things a person can't fully come back from once you've seen them clearly. They are navigating it. That is their work to do, not mine. Raymond came for a barbecue last month and pretended not to be emotional when I showed him the new firm's first quarter figures. He failed. I am 63 years old. I have almost nothing in the bank, by the standards of what I had 12 months ago. The financial advisors would tell you, I have made a catastrophic error. I would tell them they are measuring the wrong thing. What I have is a daughter who walks into a building every Monday morning with her head up, who sits across from clients and is listened to and respected, who calls me on a Tuesday for no reason and sounds like herself. What I have is 47 families with a paycheck. What I have is the knowledge that when the moment came, I did not hesitate. I am not telling you this story because I think I am exceptional. I am telling you this story because I think the choice I made is available to more people than believe it is. If there is something I want you to take from this, it is not that fathers should fight their children's battles. It is something quieter than that. Dignity, real dignity, is not something that can be stripped away by a contemptuous word in a corridor. It can only be abandoned, and it can always be reclaimed. The question is never whether you have the power to stand up. The question is whether you are willing to pay what standing up costs. For 41 years, I built things with my hands. Houses, mostly. Places where families would live and argue, and grow and grieve and carry on. I know what a good foundation looks like, and I know what a compromised one looks like. I know that the time to act is before the wall comes down, not after. If someone in your life is being made small, do not wait until they are broken to speak. Do not tell yourself it is not your place. Do not tell yourself that people with power always win. They do not. They win when those around them decide the cost of resistance is too high. For me, it was not too high. I would pay it again tomorrow without a moment's pause. The door opens. Elise comes in with the bread, already talking about something that happened at work on Friday, something that made her laugh. She puts the kettle on because she knows I've let mine go cold. She finds the butter in the same drawer it's been in since she was a child. The kitchen fills with sound and warmth. I look at Margaret's photo on the shelf. I look at my daughter moving around this room like she belongs in it, which she does, which she always has. We did well, love? I think. We did all right.